47 years they call me coach. For more than 4 decades, young men and women walk through my door. Looking back on it, I have a sense of pride in what I accomplished. I attempted to do the best with whatever was thrown my way. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I've been given credit when credit wasn't due, and I've been a fall guy when I was ready for a pat on the back. On balance, I have no complaints. And now that I've reached the twilight of my life and reflect back on how I got here, one thing becomes apparent. One of thousands of kids that came into my life, seldom did I ever give more than I got. I was going to be a minister. I was going to school at Mercer University. I was doing my practice teaching. And I was practice teaching at Lanier High School, which was an all-boys school at the time. And I had the orneriest bunch of kids you've ever seen in your life. And my first thought, these kids will never be in church. But if I teach them, I know I'll have them in PE. So that's when I actually decided I'm going to be a teacher instead of a preacher. So that's really what made me change my mind. I think Gerry's father passed away when he was about 7th or 8th grade, if I'm not mistaken. But after practice, there's this kid always hanging around. There's Gerry. And we were, after practice, we talking about going out and scouting that night that the team was playing. We had our little session before we went out to scout this team, and Gerry said, "Coach, can I go with you?" And I said, "Where do you want to go?" "We're going to scout a team." He says, "Well, I'd like to go with you." And I called Gerry's mom, and she said, "Yeah, it's all right if he went." So he went with us. Well, every time we wanted to go scouting, Gerry come by my house and wanted to know if he could go scouting with us. And I thought, this is before he hadn't played that much because he's just a freshman, but that was my first impression. I couldn't understand it. Come to find out, his mom had just gotten married again, and he didn't like his stepdad for some reason. And I never told anyone that until last night. But so he'd show up at my house at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and he's always hungry. But so my first impression with Gerry, and I tell everybody, Gerry was not that great of an athlete in the beginning, but his leadership. I can remember the first times when a lot of teammates didn't like Gerry too much, because if it started loafing or goofing off, Gerry would get on to him. And I can remember saying, "Gerry, you let us do the coaching." But players didn't always like him much, because I remember a lot of times we'd finish practice and he'd say something about, "Is that all there is to it?" And I'd say, "Shut up, Gerry." But he wasn't easy to coach, but he did what he had to do. And I know I talked to Bobby Ross about that. He asked about it, because I think God says, "You get the job done." You get the job done. It was the night after the banquet, and I'd just given Gerry the MVP, Outstanding Defensive Player award, and Gerry came up. I'll never forget that. He said, "Coach, I feel like my life is over." I said, "Gerry, your life's just beginning," and that's funny that he made that statement. Went home, they went on out partying. 4 o'clock, I think it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call, and I lived about less than a mile from where Gerry's actually placed in. And his mother called me, and I went out, and it wasn't what you saw in the movie. That didn't happen. There wasn't anyone around there that night, and couldn't get in anyway. So I went down there and saw his mom and him, and couldn't even get in to see him. So I went back, and finally, when I did go down to the hospital to see him, he had these tubes all in him. But there was never the scene that you saw in the movie. All the groups and coaches, they never came together. Now, I'm sure a lot of them did visit him while he was in the hospital. Matter of fact, the football coach for Washington Redskins came up to see him that day. Can you remember? It was, when Gerry finally did get out of the hospital, he came up to visit me and came into the training room, wanted to talk to me. And I went in there, and I was always pretty straight with Gerry, because we'd end up arguing with each other a lot of times. But I always felt good about Gerry, because I felt like he hung out in my house so much. But he's talking about, I'm not good for anything anymore. And I did. I said, Gerry, I said, you know, you're a great athlete, not because you're not better than anybody else. You're not faster than a lot of people. You're not stronger than I never could get him in the weight room. Wouldn't lift weight. I said, what made you good is your competitive spirit and your desire to win. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you've lost that too? And I mentioned, I said, there's other things you can do. And I said, there are wheelchair Olympics, you know, and he's poo-pawed that, no, you know, didn't want anything to do with that. Well, that's what the start of it was, and finally did get him into the wheelchair Olympics. And I said, Gerry, you're going to have to give up the high jump. Because he was a high jumper and a discus thrower. And another thing, a discus thrower. He always had to screw his form up, and I can still see it, that little dance he did before he threw the discus. He wasn't a great discus thrower, but he was good. But that dance, I said, if you could quit dancing and just start off right, he never did. So he never won the state or anything, but he was good. But he did give up and we took up the shot put and the javelin. So, and then he also took up coaching flag football. And a lot of guys played flag football for him. I think, if you ask me, that's not what he did. I think he's probably ended up coaching.
Exactly.
I think he might have. He did a lot of coaching when he worked for me. But then in the wheelchair, he was a lot. I had more control. The first time he got out there and he was throwing a discus, I think, and he's threw that discus, the wheelchair went over backwards. I ran over and jumped under the president's way. He says, I can get up by myself. I said, okay. So I learned that the person in the wheelchair, if he wants help, he'll ask you, don't try to help him if he doesn't help him. And I saw that in so many games, but then later he was coming down the steps there at Hellman in a wheelchair, and all of a sudden the wheelchair got away from him, went flying down about 20 yards. Gerry was laying there on the steps looking at me, and I just looked at him. And I said, can I help you? And he said, well, you could get my wheelchair. I said, okay, I'll get it for you.
Hi, did you ever see the movie Remember the Titans? Well, if you did, I'm sure you would remember Gerry Bertier. Gerry Bertier was the co-captain of the team in 1971 that won the state championship for Virginia, and who later went on to become a paraplegic at the end of his senior season. Well, I'm Buck Sutton, the president of the Gerry Bertier No. 42 Foundation, which is located here in Spotsylvania, Virginia. And for the past 9 years, we've been raising money to support spinal cord injury research. All of the money that we raise through our events, such as our golf tournament that's coming up on June 27th is donated to the Virginia Commonwealth University's Research Center at the Spinal Cord Injury Medicine Center in Richmond. So everything stays here at home. I'd like to invite you to come out and join us on June 27th at the beautiful Augustine Golf Course, where we will have a 11 o'clock lunch and a 1 o'clock tee off. We are looking for foursomes. It's $500 for a foursome. That includes your beverage of choice, a lunch, and then a full dinner banquet after the event. We will also have some dignitaries who will be in attendance. If you did see the movie and you will remember Coach Yost, we will have the original Coach Yost as a guest at the tournament, which you would be able to visit with. If you're interested in finding out more information, please give us a call. You can reach us at 540-785-0328 or visit our website at GerryBertier.com, and that's spelled GerryBertier.com, where you can get one of these brochures, fill it out and mail it in, and we'd love to have you. Thank you, and we'll see you on June 27th.